is the Conrad Alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
For 5 years, 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, streaming live on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, and Odyssey. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim, and today is November the 2nd, 2023. This is episode 392 of Workshop Radio. How in the hell is everyone out there this evening? In just a minute, we're going to bring my buddy Sam on. I think you guys have heard a little bit about him. You may have even heard a little of him. I'm stoked. This is going to be the first edition of Workshop Unplugged. Oh boy, that takes me back. But anyway, this is going to be great. We're going to do our best impersonation of Howard Stern. We're going to interview somebody, and then we're going to get a couple of live acoustic tracks at the end, which I can't wait. So anyway, let's get the announcements out of the way, and then we'll bring Sam on here, guys. First off, Thursday night, we got to remember our sponsor, and that is my good brother, Joel Riles, whom I just saw at Self-Reliance Festival from Protection Dog Podcast. If you're looking for a little more motivation to stuff in those old ear holes, add him to your podcast feed. Some of Joel's recent episodes were overcoming difficulties as you pursue your goals, which he should know, getting motivated and staying motivated. Joel loves to say, you don't get motivated, you're passionate, and then you find your motivation afterwards. And tactical decision-making. That dude is on point with his content. So give him some love, guys. His link will be in the description tonight. And the only other announcement for this week is starting next week, Thursday's episode, we are going to be moving Workshop Radio 1 hour earlier. You asked, and I'm going to deliver. Well, really, I asked. You guys filled out an online survey and decided, yes, we want to go to 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And that'll get our East Coast brethren and sisterin. Is that right? Sisterin, that sounds funny. We'll get them in on the show an hour earlier. It's going to be better for everybody. All right, guys, with that, let's bring on, give me 1 second here. Hey, Sam, how are you?
How's it going, Tim?
Excellent, excellent, excellent. We figured out the tech gremlins beforehand, which was something real simple and stupid, which happens once in a while, hey?
Yeah. Did you say it's a frozen tundra, or it's cold?
It is a frozen. Yes, it's a frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta. There is a little bit of snow on the ground here right at the moment, not a lot. We had our first day above freezing, I don't know, since about when I came back from Self-Reliance Festival. So
wow. My buddy, where my buddy's from in Canada, he calls it Manasnova. So
that's pretty good. You know, where I am, it almost gets too cold to snow sometimes. We get snow that's like sugar sand from Florida. Oh, it's miserable. So we had a little conversation in person at Self-Reliance. We recorded a little something, but I knew since we had some rather co-entwined kind of interests, some things that maybe not everybody would love, but I think it's awesome. So tell us who Sam is. Start with who slave to servant is, and go from there, brother.
Okay. Yeah. Slave to servant. You want to go slave to servant before me or me first, or just?
Yeah, tell us who you are. Let's start with who Sam is.
Okay. Well, my name's Sam, and I 40 years old, got 2 kids. I'm a full-time musician. I am a nomad. I live in a converted Greyhound bus. This has been my first full year. I moved out of my apartment exactly a year ago, like November 6th. So basically a year I've been nomadic. And I've been playing music full-time since 2017. And before all that, I used to be so what I do for a living is I play covers, and I'll go and play acoustic, and I'll loop, and I do a lot of just pop songs with my own kind of artistic spin, and people seem to like it. So I'll do everything from wineries and breweries to weddings and corporate events and parties and whatever. Just I play as many shows as I possibly can. 2019 was probably my busiest year, but before COVID, I did 193 gigs that year. Yeah. And previous to this, I'm from Chicago. That's where I grew up. Although I was born in Fargo, which is not too far from Canada. And I have a lot of Norwegian. I'm half Norwegian, so I'm like half Viking. But I used to make music in Chicago, played with a lot of different bands out in the early 2000s, made about 10 records in 10 years. And so that's kind of like where I cut my teeth as far as an artist and shaped my voice. And here I am now, getting back into music at age 40, releasing this new record with my new band, Slave to Servant. So that kind of brings you up to speed.
So we have a tradition here at the workshop. Whenever somebody comes on for the first time, when I get them to go back through kind of their history, I always love to hear what was your first job way back when, whether for pay, for volunteer, doesn't matter.
Well, it's funny. I feel like some of these questions I could answer with two, because first official job would have been I was a lifeguard. I was a state swimmer, and so that was like my first thing. Was as a competitive swimmer, as a butterflyer, and just enjoyed the water. Loved the water, but that would have been my first paid on the books taxed job. And before that, I was always hustling mowing lawns as a kid, and I would use that to go buy CDs at Target or wherever I could, like wherever, Mom, take me to get the new Smashing Pumpkins or Sponge or whatever, like whatever record, so on CD or whatever. But so that was my first job, would have been technically mowing lawns, I guess, for money.
So that fed the addiction, did it?
Yeah. I think it was important.
Absolutely. I remember some of my fondest memories were going to, the record shops and buying. For me, it was cassettes. We never had a CD player in the house till like 2000. So I don't know. You remember certain albums when you go pick them up, you just remember them, eh?
Yeah, and I think there's something that's lost. Like I had to earn it. Like I had to go and mow a whole lawn in a neighborhood for like $10 or something, or $15, and then take that money and go buy it with my hard-earned money. And then you didn't have streaming back then, so everything was like you heard the single on the radio. But if you bought an album that had a bunch of duds on it, you're like, I'm going to learn to like this record anyway. It's like, you just stick with it.
100%. I think, yeah, I don't know, maybe back in the day there was maybe a little more love for B-sides, or maybe some hesitant love,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you said, I love how people just blow over these things when they tell their stories, but you said you did 10 records in 10 years. How did that come
about? So 2001, I graduated high school. I had just exited. I went to state for butterfly and freestyle for swimming, and I broke my school record, right? So that was a big deal to me. But when I got to state, I placed about 25th in state. That's like half, because there's like 50 swimmers in an event. And I realized, wow, the top 3 guys just broke the state record. And maybe being 25th in state is good, but maybe this isn't my full on calling in life. And I'd already been playing music for a while, locking myself. Every day I'd come home from school, and I had no social life. I mean, I had it at school, but I didn't like really. I wasn't like a cliquey kind of person. I've always been kind of a lone wolf. And I would go home, and we had these things called 4-tracks back in the day. I don't know if you ever heard of a 4-track, but you used, like you mentioned earlier, cassettes, and you would record. You would learn how to record your songs and cut your teeth just demoing your crappy little songs as a high school kid or junior high kid. And so I did that for years. I probably wrote like 100 songs before I graduated high school. And thankfully, nobody could hear them because, it's not this vast ocean of internet that you can just post things and everybody gets to hear them now. It's like kind of a blessing and a cursing. But I think in that regard, it was a blessing to not have the technology back in the day. However, to answer your question, upon graduating, I knew I wanted to start a band. I thought I was into bands at the time, like Jimmy Eat World. I was really big into their Clarity album, and they were just about to release Bleed American. I don't know. I had a vast Get Up Kids, stuff like that, kind of that like Midwestern emo. That was kind of where I was from. Polyvinyl Records is in Illinois, a lot of other labels. So kind of following in those footsteps, but at the same time being influenced by all the stuff I was influenced by like pop punk and things like that, kind of melding it all together. And then I went and played in this scene in the burbs of Chicago, and sometimes we'd play Metro or the Fireside Bowl, but we were in the same scene at the same exact time as Fall Out Boy, the band, and Plain White Tees. And then the other bands like the Academy Is, and I'm trying to think, there's Spitalfield, all those bands. And so it was like left and right within about 2 years of out of high school and 2 albums, like, or 2 releases. I was watching these bands get signed to bigger labels and tour full time, some of them getting major label deals. It was kind of gnarly. It was like its own little hub. And what I loved about it was that there was just so much creativity, and there was a togetherness. There was a community at first, I would say. But like all things, things kind of blow up for people, and it changes, and it gets a little more corporate. So for a while, it was really good. I would say from 2001 to 2004, that was like the sweet spot. And so, yeah, I was in a band, made three albums. Then I started another band, made another 3 albums. Then I started another band, made another 3 albums, basically. And then there was a posthumous release that came out, a collection of B-sides. So altogether, it was about 10 records from 2001 to 2011 with 3 different groups that I was the singer and songwriter in.
And were you full timing it at that time, or trying to full time it?
I had, us creatives, right? We're not always as savvy with business. So
sure.
And I struggle with marketing. And as you know, I mean, any great politician, any great businessman, any great company, any great movement starts with a team. And I just never had a team. It was always really me. And I just never could find that kind of community on a business sense of trying to get my band out there in a real way. I think I did the best I could by myself, but I found out that, all the people with the teams it was working out quite well for them. And so I just never got my act together business wise. So
that's fair. No. And I tell my story a lot, but it doesn't matter where. Yeah. I mean, as long as you learn from it, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think for me, I'm really happy it didn't work out, because I'm not going to name any names, but there are a lot of bands that I played with that were somewhat successful, that were touring with, Fall Out Boy or Plain White Tees or any of those Chicago bands, or even bigger bands, right? And they were doing stadium tours and stuff like that, but they made like that one record and it did okay. It did good, but they lived in that shadow, It was like, our identity as a band is this album, and if we veer away from it, we've now lost our fan base. And I watched a lot of stuff like that happen, like sophomore slump style,
Sure.
And I'm just happy, because I think that at the end of the day, everybody was probably grateful for whatever opportunities they got, but for me, it's always been about growing and changing, and I never want to make the same thing twice. So for me, I think it would have made me a little bit stagnant. And I can at least say, whether or not the music's good or not, I can say that at the end of the day, every one of the records that I've ever made, none of them sound exactly alike. We took a new approach, new direction, new sound, new chords, new whatever. So that's been my journey as somebody. I just don't want to stay the same,
So 2011 till, would you say, when you started playing again? 2018, 2017, was it?
So yeah, 2011 moved to New York, became, I had toured around the country with one of the bands pretty seriously, played almost all the states. I think I've been to every state except for Hawaii and Alaska. So, but point being is that, after just 10 years of living paycheck to paycheck, kind of broke, I'd gotten married and wanted to start a family, kind of like do something a little different, but I didn't think I was going to be putting it on the back burner for as long as I did. But I took a job in New York at a KOA, and I was the general manager of the Watkins Glen KOA, and did that for about 6 years. and it was a really great learning experience. I'll say that. And however, I think that if I can say this, I think God was putting me back into my gifting, if that makes sense. Like, why did I put in those 10,000 plus hours, and why do I have a knack for this thing and a passion and love that is like undying, and I can go without meals while I'm doing it, and you know what I'm saying? Like I could bleed for this thing, and not break a sweat, really, you know. So.
Yeah, man. No, I totally get it. And I don't know. I think a feller maybe we can ignore it or negate it for a little while, but if it's your passion, it's got to come out no matter what else, because you're going to be miserable otherwise. Hey,
I agree. I think that's why we're here, is to find and fulfill our passions. And obviously the pendulum can swing. We can say, oh, you can get so obsessed with something that it's unhealthy too. But I would say that in healthy balance, we're meant to use our gifts, you know, and we all have different ones. But yeah, so when I was at the KOA, I had this time from about 2011 to 2016, and a lot happened. Like, first of all, I became a lot more aware of politics when I got there.
Sure.
And kind of, I would say I was on the conservative train there. And then I know I voted for Romney, and I remember the day after Romney lost to Obama for his second term, and I remember being really bummed out. Like, I couldn't. I don't know. I thought like the world was going to end because our guy didn't get in or something. You know, it's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah.
Kind of embarrassing to say that out loud, but you know, I had a lot of my faith poured into that, and somebody, a family member, asked me a question on my then wife's side at Thanksgiving of 2012, and I couldn't answer them. And it was a genuine question about my belief, like my stance on politics, and I didn't know enough about things. I realized very quickly that, wow, all I know is talking points. All I'm getting is the Fox News. You know, like it's kind of how I feel about the modern church. It's like you just get talking points, and it's not really planting any real seeds of growth, I feel like, or giving you enough to make an educated decision, or I don't know. That's kind of how I feel about it. Maybe it sounds kind of jaded, but anyway, so I woke. It got me to at least ask the question. He kind of stuck a rock in my shoe, and I was thinking, well, if I can't answer that, like I should really. What has changed in this country since its founding? Because I obviously am pro Constitution, and I think that it's such a great idea to have this Bill of Rights, etc. But what's changed? And well, the internet used to be a pretty free place pre-COVID, and it's kind of the wild, wild west, I felt like, and you could find anything, and it was uncensored, and even on YouTube or whatever. And that got me into the Federal Reserve Act, and then that got me into 9/11 and got me into some other topics. And before I knew it, I was full-blown rabbit trail, just had to know everything and at least consider everything. And so I spent all of 2013 basically just soaking in information. And then at the end of 2013, I started a podcast and did that for 3 years. It's called God's Property Radio. And I interviewed researchers, philosophers, naturopaths, just people that had a completely different view. It would seem that our system, I think the general sentiments that I came into as somebody who identified for a little while there as a conservative, I think some of those things were really good that I identified in, but I think there were a lot of things that weren't good. And I feel the same way about the left side of things. There are some really good things and there are some really bad things. But I ultimately realized in coming back to coming back to Christ, if I can say it like that, that these things are not of that walk. You know, these things are just worldly systems, you know, And it's just been this journey that I've been on ever since, I would say 2012, 2013, is just trying to live in it and not of it. And that's happened in multiple ways. But yeah, so a lot of the content, while I was interviewing people, I would take notes, and I have a tremendous respect for people that are good interviewers, like citizen journalism, etc. Because that's hard work, like coming up with really good, thought-provoking questions, and then keeping your guest on track is really difficult as well sometimes. But it allowed me to really just ask questions. And while I was on that campground, I'll just give you a visual. If you've ever seen the Truman Show, that's what my life was. I was in this bubble on a campground watching people vacation, and I was just working my tail off. Sure. It was the opposite for me. And I wanted out of it. And I felt like the 60+ hour work weeks, not really working in my passion, all those things just kind of grated on me. And I started writing music about my spirituality and about these findings. I just felt really inspired. And I think that being on the campground, doing jobs and learning skills, it was so awesome. And it allowed me to just put music on the back burner and just kind of like brew something with time.
Yeah.
Yep. Like a fine wine or a nice good old beer or something, And so I had a lot of time to ponder these things, and then continued going back to it and working on it. And I would say the record that I'm currently that I just released, it probably took the better part of a decade to complete it. It was like writing a book or something, as opposed to, it's like the opposite. It took is what I used to do, where I could just turn out records. But it's because I think that I had something. I was really careful because I've never written about my spirituality or like my existential beliefs or eschatology or anything like that. Sure. So I wanted to be very careful and cautious how I did it. And I wanted to do it in a way that I hope resonates with humanity on a deeper level and isn't so Christianese either. And so I just feel like I don't fit in. And I think it's wonderful not to fit in. It's a great thing, but it makes it hard to market oneself when you don't fit in, because you have all these genres and subgenres and virtue signaling and whatever. It's different.
I haven't played the interview that you and I did yet, because I'm working on a special series of in-person interviews. But at the end of the interview, you quoted Lauryn Hill and about how artists live outside the system, and our community here. And when you say it's hard to market yourself, I think I believe you're finding your community, and you're finding, because we, in content creation, whatever it is, they always say you need to niche down, you need to find your people. And you're self-employed, you're a nomad, you're a creative, and you've decided to live outside the system. I think you'd fit in really well here in an anarchist, voluntarist type of community, brother, like that. Yeah. Like where does your mindset come? If you want to kind of talk about that Lauryn Hill quote a little bit and how that's kind of reflected in where you're at.
Yeah, Lauryn Hill is really somebody that is special to me. I consider her one of my biggest influences of all time. It seems like anytime at any age, we all say wrong things too. I'm not going to speak for every single quote she's ever said, so strike that from the record. Just because I've heard some things. Whatever. But I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater either. I try to hear out people. That being said, I try to hear out people also that are completely ostracized from society. Maybe even deservingly. That maybe they've taken some stances that are like, ooh, I don't want to be near that. But I still want to hear what they said from their mouth. You know what I'm saying? And so anyway, but that all being said, Lauryn Hill she made this record everybody should know her from Fugees. And I think Outkast just beat out Fugees for like #1 selling hip hop group of all time. With their Speaker Box record, just knocked the score down. But that all being said, Lauryn Hill did this Unplugged record, and she had a huge spiritual awakening. And if you can get your hands on a copy of her MTV Unplugged record, it was just a big fu to the system. It was
Awesome.
wouldn't you expect, right? We were just talking about MTV Unplugged with Nirvana, right? So like the idea would be you play a bunch of songs off of your old records, right? And Nirvana kind of
Kurt didn't. Yeah.
Well, he did, but he also played the deep cuts that he didn't play. He kind of said "f you" to the.
Oh, he played a David Bowie cover too, didn't he?
David Bowie. He did that Leadbelly cover too. So, but point being is that Lauryn Hill basically did that on an R&B tip, on a soul tip, the Kurt Cobain, but to a whole next level, in my opinion, because you would think, play some songs off of Fugees, The Score, play some songs off Miseducation. Not one song on the MTV Unplugged record has ever been recorded. Like, there was all new spiritual material. Can you imagine how her record company felt about that? Columbia was probably so pissed off at her. And I think that's what got her out of her record deal too. But anyway, that all being said, she just has so much wisdom. And her quote was this, is that throughout history, artists have typically been people who live outside of society in order to expose society to itself. And I think that's what makes a good artist. I think distancing yourself. I personally go to the grocery store. I'm like, whoa, this is society. And then I leave. I feel like I dip my toe in and then I'm out. I don't really participate much with normal things in society. The most I get is I work. Obviously I got to go play gigs, but even then I'm like, sometimes I'll be playing, one of my least favorite places to play is like a sports bar, but occasionally, you got to make a living, right? I play Wednesday night at a sports bar, but everybody's watching TV. They're all plugged into the game, and I'm not insulting anybody. I just see it as like the gladiatorial fights and bread and circuses. Like, I can't get into it. I mean, I think it would be cool to go see a game in person, but I can't get into like screens, and I just see everybody. And this isn't saying I'm better than anybody. It's just I feel always as a misfit. I just don't get it. I don't get what's it all about. So that's I spend a lot of time listening, reading, studying, just gleaning a lot of different influences spiritually, musically. I'm also a father, so I homeschool my half of the time. I get the kids half the time, and so it's like week on, week off, or when I'm traveling during the winter, it's like month on, month off, and so it's a completely different perspective, I think, than I don't know too many people like me that are in this position, especially nomadically, but I know they exist. Like SRF was amazing. Because I met people like you. And then there was this gal there, I'll shout out to her, but her name is Rebecca. And she's living nomadically currently. And I was like, this girl is like, it was like a unicorn. They exist. I was like, damn, like I got to find more people like this that I can be like, hey, what part of the country you at? Like, let's hang out. Let's get some coffee right now. If we're going to just intertwine, So
I have another lady who's coming on next week. Same exact thing. It's incredible. I love it. I love making connections with people. Yeah. So, okay, man, there's so many ways I want to take this, but when you talked about an artist reflecting society back to themselves, right? Yeah. You had kind of the countercultural version of that in the 60s, kind of the Woodstock thing, like, the Vietnam movement and everything. And then we see, I'm just going to say it, we saw 2020 COVID and all of that. And you had a lot of these bands who would have been the stick it to the man years ago. And now they're, hey, you need to stick it to yourself, right? So, and then you have other things like that band we talked about, the Defiant, the new supergroup of the guys who got kind of kicked out of rock and roll I mean, how much more rock and roll can it be than to get kicked out and to keep making music, right? Yeah. So where do you see yourself and music in general right now as a need to be a mirror to all that bullshit that we just went through?
I think now's the time for all the creatives to come through. And I think one thing about artists is that, speaking more on what you asked about the Lauryn Hill thing and our job, I think the thing that really separates us artists is we're very intuitive. We're actually very sensitive people, and I don't mean that in a weak way, because I don't consider myself weak at all. I can dish it, I can take it, I have thick skin, But what I mean is I'm highly aware of people, what they're feeling, what's going on in the world. And we do that. We have this, I think Rick Rubin said something like this in his latest book called The Creative Act, A Way of Being. And it's one of the greatest books I've ever read. But he talks about artists being in tune with the source. And we know, I don't want to get too crazy with you here, but can I show you a tattoo real quick?
Sure, man.
We're
live. Yes, this is workshop radio. You go ahead. Okay.
Check this out. This is a songwriting robot.
That is awesome.
It's controlled by the hand of God, remote control, that it's just pumping out sheets of music. And that is what I do. I'm in tune with, I don't do it. I'm a vessel, but it's there for all of us. We're all here to be creative. We're made in the image of God. And the people that are artists, we just grab it. We get it at random times. It happens when you don't even try. It's not like I'm Beethoven and I'm an engineer that's, just going through a bunch of calculations on it. I mean, you can do it that way, but I think that we're in tune with this. It's a very spiritual thing. I very much consider being an artist a super spiritual experience. At least that's my experience here on this earth. So
I just want to read this comment from Lone Canadian. He's actually a friend of mine who we met through different sources, connections on the internet, lives a half hour away. But he said, artists have always existed outside the norm. Part of creativity is not doing what everyone else is doing.
Yes.
You want to comment on that?
Yeah. It is. I feel that artists are in a lot of ways, if I bring it back to my faith, I feel like artists are the people that they can't really be controlled by all these things. They see it all, but they choose to live outside of it. And it's a lot like when I think back to the disciples and I think about Yeshua and I think about where did they all get together in houses, like the Roman government, like Constantine melded Christianity with paganism and the government because he couldn't control it. These were, I think, if there's anything, like the disciples were essentially anarchists, the original founders of that faith, and I'm not here to tell anybody what they should believe or anything, but I largely put that in the same can. And we become, instead of I think Lauryn Hill said it best, and she was using it as hip hop. Hip hop used to have a strong voice. It used to be the voice of the voiceless. And I think this is the same thing with punk rock, right? These different niche movements, right? But eventually it became the voice of the corporate. And once you become the voice of the corporate, you become a different beast, and you lose your potency, you lose your autonomy. I think that's the other crisis that we have going on is our identity. We don't even know who we are. The idea that we go. At what age, Tim? You're in kindergarten, your teacher goes, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? Well, that assumes, in that question, that you are what you do. What do you want to be? I'm not, so I can say I'm an artist, but I'm just wearing a different hat. You know what I'm saying? I'm putting my artist hat on. Oh, now I'm going to be dad, right? Now I'm going to be dad. It's okay to be a chameleon and blend in and be other things. And not be defined that way necessarily. But I agree with that gentleman absolutely wholeheartedly. And I think that the artists catch on to things because they're not participating in all the bread and circuses and to be fair, the system, and I feel like it's always been this way since Egypt, is it's slavery. Like it's just always existed in one way, in one fashion or the next. And right now we're just in a voluntary debt-based servitude, and I don't think people realize it. The more you own, the more things own you. And especially when we're living in a fiat currency system, so those are things that I like to talk about in my music. I feel like artists, because they choose hopefully to be as wise as they can with their money, or they live a little bit more frugally, let's say, because they're not obsessed with keeping up with the Joneses or anything. They don't have to have a boat or something. And so these people catch on to things that are going on that other people aren't catching on to. And a lot of times they shape the culture and they shape the trends to come. They call it before it happens because they can see the writing on the wall,
Yeah. For whatever reason, I was thinking of something like even Star Trek, from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I mean, there was creatives there putting together science fiction that kind of saw the future as well, for the better or for the worse. So I got to see I think I caught the first 4 or 5 songs of your live, I was going to say presentation, but your concert at the event.
Yeah.
And man, I mean, you've got the knockoff Donald Trump hats, and you've got the jumper, were they hazmat suits? Is that what you're wearing? Or talk about talk about that.
Yeah, I wanted to do something that I felt fit in, and so Outkast is another one of my, like Andre 3000 is one of my favorite, probably like my second favorite rapper of all time, and just amazing artist. But Outkast used to have these suits, and he had this suit. You can look up the picture on Google Images, but it was like a jumpsuit like that, where it was like almost like a hazmat style suit or like a prison suit, but it was like gray, and it said, okay, quit playing and hand over the cure. It was just like, that's amazing. Like that, those kind of things. And I'm like, I would wear stuff like that all the time. If I had like, and I'm like, why don't I make merch like that? Why don't I start making taglines like that people can wear, where it's not necessarily the band name on the shirt. It's just like, this is a lyric from our song or something that is part of the message, or, so Love Against the Machine came to me it came to me pre-COVID. It came to me in 2019. I was just thinking about flipping the whole system upside down, and how like rage just begets rage, and and I was actually going to see Rage, by the way. I love Rage Against the Machine, stylistically speaking. I think that their first record is groundbreaking. I think Evil Empire is ridiculous. It's probably my favorite one by them. But anyway, they don't practice, well, maybe they do practice what they preach. It sure appeared to me for a while that they were anti-establishment, that they're completely establishment. Like when I saw that COVID hit, this is after the whole Love Against the Machine thing, they were the only concert I had bought tickets to. But I remember being on Instagram as everybody was canceling dates. Oh, tour canceled. And I'm like, oh, I think it was like $200 or $300 to go see Rage. And I was like, this is a bucket list item. I'm going to go see that.
Man.
And so that got canceled. And I was like, what is going on? How do you control the world like this? Like on a music scale, I was just blown away by the artists not taking a stance and just being so like, cause like, it was like 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And then just wash your hands. It'll be okay, to, wow, we're just going to shut the whole world down and everybody's going to like start virtue signaling and bullying people into wearing masks. And after that, I have to tell you, and I'm not trying to get too far. I'll get back to the outfits here, but
that's all right.
But I almost, Tim, I feel more free than I've ever felt because of COVID. I'm very thankful that it happened, because it drew a line in the sand. Like it drew a very bold line. The people that I used to look up to artistically, and I can separate art from the person. I don't have a problem doing that, but I have zero attachment to almost any artists or any of these people. I used to kind of have some of them up on a pedestal a little bit more than other people in my life. And now I'm like, I I don't see where you're even influencing the youth in a proper way. I don't feel I wouldn't show you to my kids. Like I wouldn't, what you're preaching is so the antithesis of what I want to teach my children. And I think that, so that's part of it, is like love against the machine. That's the only way we're going to do it, is by accepting and loving others regardless. We're not trying to control people. We were made autonomously to be kings and queens and treat each other as kings and queens. Can you imagine if I was like, hey Tim, what's up, King? How you doing? Like the way we talk to each other, just talking like that and meaning it though. Like when you see the royal status in your fellow brother and sister, like just that idea doesn't exist in the world. They want to divide us. That's why there are these dichotomies, like various ones, and it's sad, you know. But yeah, the love against the machine is a life statement for me. It's just like that's it. Like I'm against the system as I see it, and I think we need to find out who we are. Where is our identity? Where does it start? Is like Rick Rubin writes about it, the source. Okay, who's the source? Who's the source? If I have a royal status, wow, that's a completely different outlook in life, and it makes you want to handle things differently. You want to talk to people differently. I don't know. It's a blessing to get a window with somebody and be a beneficial presence to them, you know?
So in this, so you go from, 10 albums, 10 years to, the better part of a half a decade at KOA. And in that time, you're kind of letting that album kind of percolate in the back of your brain. And at the same time, so at what point did you make the decision to become a nomad, to move into a Greyhound and travel? And I'd like to hear a little bit too about how you're doing the full-time band thing, because I mean that's entrepreneurship. That's successful businessmen right there, whether you say it or not, So how did those things come out of, overseeing a campground and watching all these people coming for vacation?
Yeah, so I guess the seeds were planted on the campground, number one, to be a nomad, because I worked for family, and my uncle who owned the campground still does. He lived full-time in an Essex motorhome. It was probably like a $500,000 rig and 45-footer. And I would meet with him like every day in that thing, and we'd go over numbers and spreadsheets and all kinds of stuff. It was a great time of learning on multiple angles. And I was kind of very envious. I'm like, I don't know if I want to live in a house. This is way cooler. Like to be able to just pick up and go, and home is where you park it. So I think that was part of the camping industry's influence on me. It's getting out of that Truman Show and looking for what was it called? Fiji.
That's right.
that's I'm still looking for Fiji too, but
that's all right. You're on the road toward it.
But yeah, so what forced me on a personal level to do what I did was really a sink or swim situation where my then wife had completely checked out of the marriage. We had the kids were very little. My daughter probably wasn't quite 3 yet, and I think my son was 4. And it was just, it kind of hit me out of nowhere that it was going to end. And it's interesting now that I talk about it. I can look back at it, and I smile and fine, but I remember it was like part of your life's ending at the time, like when something like that happens. And some of the content on this record is about that experience. I wrote a song for my daughter on there called Lucy May, about raising her to teach. I think a big thing that I found in women from my perspective, and I'm not trying to insult anybody, but it's just some findings. And certainly the last 2 relationships that I've had were with women that they didn't have a father present in their life. And, sure. And this works with men too, right? Men don't have a father, men don't have a mother, women don't have a mother, whatever. It works on all these levels. But in that instance, what I learned was that a lot of women get into relationships, and because they had that lack, they want to have you be their father. And I'm not here to be your father. I'm here to be your husband and your partner. And I think that is an unfair thing that is thrust upon these women. And then it's an unfair thing that's thrust into a relationship as well. And I promised my ex that when we split, I was like, I'm going to make sure that Lucy, that she's going to know how to be loved by a man, and she's going to know how to love a man. And I'll tell you something, like, that girl has taught me in ways that I'm just so blessed. Like, I mean, I'm a single father, and I'm content with being single. I mean, as much as I think it would be awesome to find a partner one day, find a woman that I want to be with, my daughter, just the way that she holds my hand and talks to me and tells me what's on her mind, it's like the most amazing relationship that I've ever had. And so there's so much beauty that comes from the ugly things that happen in your life, and you can get bitter, you can get better. And I feel like that was a really hard thing for a while, but in essence, at the time, when I look at it in hindsight, I kind of feel like my old marriage and the American dream and that career were like Babylon for me. Like, they were slavery and not the right thing for me. And God had a different plan, or a more better way for me to flourish as a human being. And so I think I've been doing that. And so I was forced out of that career for various reasons. Due to that, I had a split with my family on the campground that owned it. And I said to myself, okay, well, I had been studying emotional intelligence. I had been taking this course called Save My Marriage course from marriagehelper.com. Dr. Joe Beam, really like a lot of his literature, his book. It's great for if you're ever having problems in like your marriage or something, just really great resource. A lot of wisdom, a lot of social sciences in it. But so I just started working on myself, and I came to the conclusion, it was this Les Brown quote. It was like, in order to do something that you've never done before, you have to become someone you've never been before. And I realized that, and Jack, I'm gonna go ahead and shout out to Jack Spirko here, because he's the reason why I went to SRF, by the way. Like, if it weren't for,
didn't know that.
yeah, I've been listening to Jack for a while, and I actually wanted to interview him on God's Property Radio a long time ago, but I didn't get a chance to reach out because my marriage like imploded, and he was like next up. That was like in 2016. I wanted to interview him, but anyway, that all being said, Jack said something that really has stuck with me, Tim, and I actually got to tell him this at SRF when he did his 13 stomps that he was doing on his podcast.
Dude, how many people? Go ahead.
Oh, dude, all of it's gold. But the thing that I think I had to realize is that when he said, you deserve whatever you want, like, or whatever it is, like, you just have to, you deserve it. You just haven't earned it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like, I think part of my problem with the Christian culture that I came from kind of beats people down about themselves a little bit too much. And I don't know that that's everybody's experience, but that's how I felt in the churches that I was a part of. It's like, no, our righteousness is like filthy rags, right? Like, or whatever, that we'll quote verses and stuff. And I don't think that's at all what God wanted for us. And I've had to escape that. And that's really what my record is about. It's about a mind shift, because you can't free yourself of the system until you free your mind. And that's been my journey the last like 12 years of my life, is just unlearning and relearning and implementing and doing and just growing. And but Jack, man, that hit me hard, really hard. And that's something I've been taking with me and jotting things down on some of the new things that I'm trying to do right now. But Yeah. You were asking about the music. So I decided that I never wanted to do covers, Tim. Never wanted to do covers. Never interested in playing other people's music. Obviously, I just want to make music because it flows through me like a songwriting robot, right? So, however, I have friends in Chicago that are in cover bands now that used to play with me in original bands. And one of them is in a quite successful cover band. And he makes like six figures doing it. Like, so, I mean, I'm not nowhere near at that point of success, but I thought to myself, well, if I can make half that, like I could feed my kids and,
Right.
and I could have, well, the best part, Tim, is this. What is money? What is money really? It's just it's like a token or a symbol for the time that you just gave away. Right.
Yep.
So really, if you think about it, time is money. Money is time. So time is the most valuable asset we have. And if you get your time back, I'm gonna argue this with anybody, is that if you have your time back, you are wealthier than the people with money. I mean, you can do a lot with money, but if you have the time to do things or put into people or whatever it is you're here to do with your gifting, you are rich, my friend. You are the richest out there. And then that's what I found, Tim, was that I was putting 60 plus hour work weeks in. Well, let me tell you this. My busiest year, 2019, this does not include driving time, right? Because I have spreadsheets for my cover business. And the hourly gigs go from 2 to 4 hours, depending, usually 3 hours to average. I think I did 550 hours of performance time, and I made like $60,000 in like 2019. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I opened my own LLC, and I'm going to go ahead and shout out to Jack again, because Jack, I was listening to his podcast all this last winter, just like kind of going through the back catalog and stuff, because it had been a while, and he was saying how to get out of debt and start your own LLC and all this stuff, and I'm like, I already did it. Like, Jack, thank you for your validating my whole life. Like I like the last 6-7 years, I found a way to write off, a Martin guitar or a vinyl pressing or shirts that I sell to people or meals, everything, traveling, lodging, because I can do it in the system. Like he said, like these people created for themselves. They have all these loopholes, just follow the system and use the same things they use, and it's true. And I'm just so happy. Like I love Jack and I love his podcast. I like how he's real, but he's hard, but he's real. And he has like a very, I don't know. He just resonates with me, I guess. I don't know how I can put it exactly.
Brother.
He's sincere. He's sincere. So
you get what you get is what you get with Jack. And I mean, he was my mentor before he even knew I existed for many years, really? and then I got, because I mean, I listened to him since 2013 and I started everything I have here because of him and Nicole from Living Free in Tennessee.
No way.
Yeah. And then we get to stand on stage and do a roundtable presentation together. So absolutely, brother.
That's so funny because it was those two who got me to go to SRF, because I heard her on his podcast talk about it. And I thought to myself, well, I'm about 6 hours from here in the Ozarks staying with my parents right now. I might as well go. So yeah, that's so cool. We got that connection. That's
so, man. All right. So that brings you to, which I thought was kind of apt, because you said you kind of escaped your own Babylon. And what's kind of cool is that happens to be the name of the album, which I think is friggin' awesome. So I want to geek out over music for a few minutes too, if you're cool with that.
Dude,
man, your story's been deep. And oh my God, thank you for telling, like, what a great story. Thank you, brother, for this. And so when I heard it, of course, to me, I was like, okay, that's post grunge right there. That it took me back to like 1999 to 2003. hanging out in my dorm at what was called Bethany Bible College at the time, and then
No way.
now Kingswood University. Yeah. Do you? Yeah. So 4 years.
We're
And
from
of
the
course-
same culture.
Yeah, oh, 100%. So in our interview that hasn't played yet, you mentioned a band that you'd listened to called Poor Old Lou, and I hadn't heard of them, but I went back and listened to them today because I was like, I got to get into the vibe of tonight's episode, and they had kind of a collective soul presidents of the United States of America vibe a little bit, and I was like, and this was 94. They were groundbreaking in the Christian alternative scene,
Yep.
So where did your influences come from for this record and kind of the bands you listen to? Where did that inspiration come from?
Gosh. Wow. I mean, I'll go all the way back and I'll give you the deep cut.
Yeah, man. All of it.
It's a little embarrassing when you think about the first records that you ever bought, but I think they all matter. Even if, I went to there was this Salvation Army camp in Wisconsin, just over the border of Illinois, near Twin Lakes. And it was kind of a free camp. And when I would go, I was the minority. It was mainly inner city kids. And I think I was probably, if there were 100 guys there, like 10 of us were white, right? So my first love, though, it worked out really well because I was into R&B and hip hop, like from the get-go. I say this all the time in interviews. I say that the first album that I ever owned out of my own volition, like going to Walmart and buying it, was the Bodyguard soundtrack with Whitney Houston and all that good stuff. I mean, I wanted to be the bodyguard. Like, let's just face it. Like, Whitney Houston's beautiful.
Dude,
but
I had my grade 6 dance to that song. So
which one? I will always
love you. Oh yeah,
okay.
I remember it. So yeah, it's cool. I get it.
I have Nothing's my jam. But anyway, before that, I was only allowed to listen to Christian music. So I don't know if you ever were in that kind of situation.
I wasn't, but I had relatives who were. So
oh man, but it was. I appreciate that my parents cared enough to like about what went into my ears, and they wanted to wanted to do the right thing. I just think at some point I think it got a little harsh, like or a little too strict, and then I rebelled, and then they kind of let up later. But point being is the first album that I was ever bought or given was DC Talk's New Thing.
Yes, and everybody else is like, "What the hell are they even talking about?" But that's cool, man. Their Jesus Freak song, man, I had that on repeat for months. I loved that song. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it all aged so well, but I mean, there still are some good songs. But yeah, so I came from just super Christian music to R&B and hip hop. I would say I really got into the stuff Babyface had produced at the time, like Tony Braxton and things like SWV and Jodeci and stuff like that. Like I loved R&B so much, and I think I have a disposition. I always seem to really like jazz chords, and a lot of that stuff was very jazzy. And hip hop in the 90s was largely jazz samples. It was like old Pete Rock's like sampling old jazz, 12 inches, But so I was into a lot of rap, like everything from Pharcyde, Dr. Dre, Snoop, Bone Thugs, all that kind of stuff. But I'd say Tupac was like my favorite, and still is my favorite. I think he was such a Renaissance man, and I love that. I love his hustle. Like you could just see he was always like in the studio. He's like, oh, I just got shot. I just got out of the hospital. Just got out of jail. I got to go in the studio and make another song, And I just loved. He was like the Prince of hip hop at the time. Like he just couldn't stop. And also, he was an actor. Like it was like awesome. So I just like his potency a lot. And I feel very blessed to have witnessed him. And that was while Nirvana was going on, right? So I missed Nirvana during while they were a band, and I was into like Tupac, And then Kurt died, and I went into junior high. I went into 6th grade in 94, and I was really into the hip hop. But I, like you said, Unplugged was a big one. But Nevermind came along. Like, I got a hold of Nevermind in 7th grade, and it just changed everything. I was like, I have to pick up a guitar and start messing around, you know? So from that point, it was like Smashing Pumpkins. Trying to think, Rage Against the Machine was big. Red Hot Chili Peppers had One Hot Minute at the time, and I think that's a criminally underrated record with Dave Navarro on it. They're only with Dave Navarro. And then it quickly changed into, like, I think we were talking about this in our little short that we did at the SRF, but it got really poppy and happy after Nirvana, right? And like the Green Day, the punk rock, the more Ramonesy, boppy kind of stuff. And then the thing we didn't talk about was ska. Ska punk.
Dude,
like,
hold on.
Yeah.
Well, right down here, where is it in my notes tonight? Were you ever into ska? There you go.
Oh, totally. I had chops. Like, I mean, I sported chops, like, even in, like, forever. I was a chops guy. But yeah, like Less Than Jake, Real Big Fish, Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. I played with Mighty Mighty Boss Tones one time. I'm trying to think of who else. Animal Chin, 5 Hour and Frenzy. I interviewed Leonore on my old podcast back in the day.
Really? I loved them back in the day.
Yeah.
And you never hear anything about them anymore. But again, you know,
they were. I appreciate them. They definitely were a more leftist band, but I really appreciate what they tried to do for Christianity and stay a Christian band, but yet play. Half their shows were at churches, half their shows were in the world. And like, it was like they didn't make much off the worldly shows. They made a lot off the church shows. And I saw them at Judson Wheaton College or Judson? I think it was Judson College. I saw in 1998. I saw 5 Hour and Frenzy, Supertones, and Insiders. And that was my first official show. If you don't include a couple other excursions, which are a little embarrassing, I think my first concert was Carmen at like a stadium, you know, and then Newsboys at the same stadium.
I actually love the Newsboys, unironically.
That's like Peter. What is his name? I forget the guy who wrote all the songs, but
yeah, I can't remember, but I know. Yeah. And
well, I think Steve Taylor like created that band. He's like a genius. If you know,
do you remember their circus? They did like. There was this whole movie or video that came out. It was like an hour-long thing. It was Under the Big Top. Do you remember that? Or did that pass you by? That was, I don't know how I get into that, but you know what? My first band live performance I ever went to, the Supertones.
No way.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I went and saw them
crazy
in 2000. I saw them at a little Wesleyan church in Woodstock, New Brunswick. I don't know how much they had to pay to bring them, but man, they were right at the height of their popularity, and they were so good. But then Scott went, you know.
Sure, yeah. That's crazy. I mean, that would have been. What's up? Are people wanting to come up yet? Are they okay for now? Kind of. I can go in the other room. Sorry to interrupt. My son's.
You're good, man. We're all right. We're doing good so far tonight. And
I'll probably have to move downstairs to play a song at some point, or unless you want to.
We can finish. We can wrap her up here in just a minute if that's good with you. I know I don't want to hold. Yeah.
Well, I'm fine for a little bit longer. But yeah, music. Yeah.
How long do you have? So we make sure I wrap it up.
Let's try 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's good, man.
At 10:30,
10 more minutes.
Then they can come back up. I think they can hang for another 20 minutes.
Yeah, no worries.
So from
can we stay up?
Yeah.
You're good, man. Don't worry.
So from the ska era, then it quickly transitioned to like the late 90s and like the Midwestern emo, like the Get Up Kids and Jimmy Eat World and Mineral and American Football and Braid and all these kinds of bands that would become like they were the precursors to like the Fall Out Boys, like the bands that we were like the later rendition. Like we took that mixed with all of our 90s influences and kind of put it all together into something different. And but again, so that was a thing for a while, and then I just kind of came back to hip hop. And for a long time I was just into like Common and the Roots and D'Angelo and that kind of stuff. I got into electronic music for a while, and then I just took a break from music pretty much when I moved here to New York. I didn't listen to music, and I think I said this in that short, like my prefrontal cortex had fully developed, and I just wanted to learn. And so I'm largely a podcast guy, and I just would rather do that. However, when I'm just chilling, my go-to band, my two go-to artists like that I listen to the most, and I never get sick of for some reason, is Sade. She's like my number one. Actually covered her song Pearls on our Singularity release. And then a band called Minus the Bear, and they're very unique. They're from Seattle. They're just, to me, they're flawless. Like, you can't go wrong. It's just they don't veer away so much from their style, but they do evolve, and I don't think they've made any bad records, and they're just really enjoyable to me. So,
who do you think? I'm going to ask you one more question, then we'll go into the music if you want. But I know we talked about the Defiance, the one that keeps coming to mind, because there's a bunch of artists that are kind of countercultural right now. But who do you think is the modern grunge, or the people that are kind of reacting against the system or creating something new that it's so hard to say, oh, it's Hollywood or it's whatever, but who's creating right now, if you're up on it, that you think is doing great things?
You're okay. Well, first off, I'll say this is, I know I have contacts in the industry, and I know this to be a fact, is that they are intentionally shaping culture.
Sure.
And they purposely will stay away from things like this,
Yep, 100%.
That's facts. But to answer your question, I think the Defiant is the first thing that I've heard where I got really excited, because I unfollowed like all these people except for Pete Parada. Like, I was already following him because he was in Face to Face. I was a huge Face to Face fan in the late 90s. He also drummed in Saves the Day, and arguably on their two best records, in my opinion. And then he played in Offspring for quite some time there. And I'm not really a fan of Offspring. I like their old stuff from like the 90s, but I'm not really I remember seeing him post that in 2021 when The Jab came out and everything. And I was like, I reposted it immediately. I'm like, we need this. We need another voice of reason. Like, and so I didn't know he was going to start a band. I didn't know what he was going to do. I just knew that I had to back Pete Parada with everything I had. And so I think I told my friends at Canary Cry as soon as he posted it, like, that, start talking about this, start talking, I've been following Pete since before he even posted anything. But yeah, I think largely on a musical scale, I don't know, Tim, from a music scale other than the Defiant,
sure,
anything that I'm truly really excited about. But that doesn't mean it's not out there.
Sure.
However, I'm excited more about things like SRF and various kinds of conferences where I meet other people, and that's what I'm excited about, is that I think that this community can create a community for the artists. And I think we're on the precipice, Tim, of something that's totally uncharted. We are ready to open up this can of something that, like the pyramid's like this, we're on the bottom. No, we're going to the top here. We're going to flip the pyramid upside down. All of us are on the top. And I think that the way that music, we've watched the industry change over the years, technologically speaking. I mean, yeah, I'm selling like antiquated CDs and vinyl, but I mean, it's one thing that's constant and always going to happen is change, right? And so I think that music doesn't have to look like you go to a city anymore. I think you can go to hubs in more rural places and go play for communities. And that actually seems way more punk rock to me than going to a city and paying the bridge tolls to get into New York City, like the worst city in the whole world. I don't know. I just, you got to pay me to go to a city, and you got to pay me damn good at this point to get my band to come play a city. That's how I feel about it. You better pay me more than my cover band would get paid. You know?
Yeah, I love it. All right, brother, you got a couple of tunes for us, don't you? You got. Well, I should ask you. Do you think you got two in you?
Oh yeah. Let me start. I'll start with the one. We'll see how the voice does. And
sure. I'm going to put you full screen, so I'm going to still be here. And when you finish up your second song, I'll just throw you in the background and I'll do my close up. But just don't leave. I got a couple quick things I wanted to touch base with you.
Oh, definitely. I'm just looking. I'm sorry to cheat, but I have to use
Take your time. No, man. Yeah. If you want to get set up, I can.
I don't want to botch my own song, so I'm going to have a teleprompter.
You do your thing. You get set up, and I'm just going to mention a couple things here while you're doing it, and then give me the thumbs up. So, sure. Guys, you need to check out. Well, you don't need to do anything, but if you want to support Sam, go to Slave to Servant, and that's SlaveTwoservant.com, and you can get his really cool. I'm going to show it because I love it. I'm a sucker for really cool vinyl, and you guys got to see this. I hope it'll show up because my office is dark here. But I don't even know how to explain it, but it's clear with yellow swirls in it, and it is incredible. It is, honestly, it might be the most gorgeous record I have. It's up there with a few of them for sure.
Well, and also the CD has a bonus track because I know CDs are kind of on the out, but I put a B-side. There's a 14th track on the CD version that is not on the digital or the vinyl. So.
Dude, you went back. Oh man, that is so 90s with a hidden track and everything. I love
it. Yeah. Let's see here. I'm just trying to figure out. I want to see how I look on your screen here because I had to minimize you for a second here.
They put you up. Whoops, that's you. There we go.
Let me see here. Okay, so I'll back up a little bit. We'll do some Indian style here. Maybe I'll aim it down a little bit.
Sure.
So oops. Breaking records. Okay. As long as it looks good to you, I will go.
You're good, man. You go right ahead. Tell us what you're playing.
Yeah. So, okay, real quick before I play it, this song is called Yeshua, which is the Hebrew name for Jesus. And it's on the acoustic version, which is what you're going to basically hear now, is on this album called Singularity. You can go on Spotify and just listen to this. Also, I wanted to mention I just completed a new video for the intro on this, and I came to the realization that this has 16 songs on it, and 14 of them have music videos, which is kind of insane. So there's a lot of content on our YouTube channel. I would appreciate if you like what you hear, please just at the bare minimum, just go on Spotify and follow us, become a follower. I think we have 120 followers or something, it just helps. And then there's a full band version we just shot a music video for a few days ago, which I'm very excited about releasing in 2024 off of Escape Babel on the new album. So the song is called Yeshua. I will go for it. Sorry, one sec. All right.
Maybe what we see and everything we breathe ain't the be all and end all. Maybe what we do don't do much without a clue. Our cluelessness won't glue us into fate. We're swimming in a world, lies we believe. We're drowning in the shadow and the deepness that goes deeper than depths of our entire mind. Cross good of our life. Yeshua, Yeshua. The heavens reply. Yeshua, Yeshua. Embraced, engulfed, immersed in every doubt. It takes a lot of guts to spill them out before you make it. Right side, we wanna be genuine, but remain human fragile. Lens, stretching signs, wrecking everything you design, even conquering times. No match the grace that comes when undeserved. Lord of our life, Yeshua, Yeshua. The heavens reply, Yeshua, Yeshua. Hallowed be thy name, Yeshua, Yeshua. Created divine, Yeshua, Yeshua. Lord of our life, Yeshua, Yeshua. Lord of our life, Yeshua, Yeshua. Heaven breathe thy, Yeshua, Yeshua. The heavens reply, Yeshua, Yeshua. Created divine, Yeshua, Yeshua, Yeshua.
Dude, what do I say? Oh my God. That was so good. So guys, you got to know this. Sam's like, yeah, I'm going to start with an easy song so I can warm up my vocal cords.
What's a little lower?
Yeah. That was great. Oh my goodness. Midwest Preparedness said goosebumps engaged. And I didn't want to bring up too many comments because I didn't want to ruin the moment. But Chris says, I love how musicians start out with obscure bit of strumming that makes you run your head. And then they do this beautiful thing. So dude, that is awesome. So yeah, they there's a few people in here who say they want to get you at the Midwest Preparedness Festival in Kansas. Yeah. So
let's do it. Even if it's just unplugged, and not the band. I'm having a hard time right now because of this is. Well, we should talk about this after, but I'll do one more. I'll do one more for you. And then we could maybe talk a little bit about this before we close out. But I'd like to talk about that, about the festivals and music and my place in it, I guess.
I would love that. Sure.
Just a little bit. So, but this song is called Hindsight 2020. And I wrote this in New Year's of 2020 before the pandemic. It was the last song to make this record. And I wrote it about kind of rising above and through adversity and things like that. And there's some metaphors in it in regard to the triangular scheme that we're underneath, but also having to do with other things that I went through with, like, maybe a love triangle, we'll just say, things like that. But yeah, this song is, like, to me, it's actually a really positive song, and it's about kind of just moving forward and focusing on what you can control. And I don't know, I just enjoy it. It's kind of got some jazzy chords in it too. I want to apologize ahead of time if I just missed some notes, because I haven't done any vocal stretches, and this is a little higher, but I think we'll see how it goes. So let me take one sip of water and we'll do this song. There's a music video online for the acoustic version of Yeshua. Like I said, there's a band version coming out in the new year. And then this song has a music video for Hindsight 2020. And I do all my own videos. Like, I write the scripts, and that's one of my passions too, is just being creative that way and giving the song a different spin. And this one is like this noir, kind of like Sherlock style mystery video. And it's actually pretty entertaining. And so I play this guy with a mustache, and it's really funny. So feel free to check that out on the YouTube channel.
What's the use in sleeping? I've been asleep for my whole life. Anyway, stones and sticks. Why you waste time repeating? We're just a rerun on our screens every day. I highly like the story with the twist on the rock, so faded, but I made it from my bottom to top. It's almost what someone wanted me to play, but shit, I prevail, sit still, tip scales and blades. Whatever happened to the golden rule and when was the sea? Whoever has the goal, they make the rules, and they displace, but I place my faith in something else. And I finally figured out what you're all about. Talk is cheap when true ain't free. Said I finally figured out what it's all about. Typical triangular scheme. So if all it's sick, why you waste time on thinking? I've been in silence my whole life anyway. Scratch the itch. Why you waste time on healing when we're just cheated on our dreams every day? Conclusion, only so much time left on the clock, so face it till you make it to the bar. Finally drops it. 5 of us and just wanna hate, but haters gonna hate, so create, elevate, never let that ego inflate. Whatever happened to ability and when was it squeezed? But took control, I like the way that you can do anything, but you can't do everything. Finally figured out what you're all about. The talk is cheap when true ain't free. Said I finally figured out what it's all about. a typical try and you lost it. Then I finally figured out what you're all about. Talking shit when you ain't free. Said I finally figured out what it's all about. A typical try and you lost it. Finally figured out what you're all about. Talking shit when truth ain't free. Said I finally figured out what it's all about. A typical try and you lost
Dude, I don't think I can clap. It would, dude, that was, oh, thank you. This was more than I even could have expected. So I knew it was going to be something special, but thank you for bringing it, man. This was incredible. Thank you.
No, it's a pleasure speaking with you. I mean, I feel like we're kindred spirits cut from the same fabric in a lot of ways. So,
I've done what we call talk radio live on here before, where I get people to submit 15-minute segments and we do like a 24-hour, 48-hour kind of live stream that we've done. And now I can kind of venture into seeing where we could get a whole bunch of artists together and do almost like an online live music festival where guys check in for half hour, say hello, plug their stuff, and play a couple of songs.
Wow. That's an online open mic or something.
Yeah. I've got, Oh, dude, this is So talk a little bit then. I know you got to get out of here.
No, that's okay.
You want to play at some festivals? Is that kind of, is that your dream or your goal?
So here's like my thing. We did so the only two shows that Slave to Servant has ever played. One was a live stream when we released Singularity back in 2021. We played at a Messianic synagogue above it. It was a coffee shop and it was a live stream, so there was nobody publicly in attendance other than the staff and us. And we did that live on YouTube, and that was our only show until Self-Reliance Festival. And we dropped this at Self-Reliance Festival, this new album, Escape Babylon, with a full rock band. So like that was night and day difference between those performances. One was an unplugged, like full band, and one was plugged in full band, you know. But my issue is, like, I'll go and I'll play these festivals by myself, like I just did, and I can loop too. Like, I'm a solo artist. I make a living off of doing beats and playing covers. But I could go play these festivals and go myself. But it is I would love to bring the band and actually have 3 other people. And this is something I really love that you're like one of these people that just wants to link people together, because I could use some help in this regard. Is I don't view Slave to Servant as a band in the sense that there are just set members. I want this band to be a collective of whoever can and wants to be a part of it. So if you threw out Midwest, you know, that festival, if that festival booked us and I can't get people in my area to come with me where I'm at currently, maybe some people in the area or who are going to be there want to learn the songs on bass and drums and lead guitar, and they want to play. And maybe it's just like I don't know how it would all work, but I know I've heard of, like, there's a band, I think they are called Infirmities. They're an old Christian punk band. I might be wrong about that, but they were one of the first like punk bands in the 80s that was Christian, and they're at the point where they have such a niche following that no matter what city they play, he has a band in every city, any city he goes. And so it's just the original singer. He flies out to places and plays and has different bands at every event, and they know all the songs. So I'm not expecting that to that degree, but I like that idea a lot. And I would love, and it's special. Like each show is special. Each thing that we do has purpose. Like I'm not looking, like we're playing our third show this Sunday in Penn Yan, New York, little Penn Yan, New York, this little town in the Finger Lakes. And my friend is running as a local libertarian, and I don't vote, but if I was a voter, I'd probably vote libertarian. And I love Phil. I know that he can affect local change. He's a great person, and he believes in freedom. And so we thought, okay, well, voting day is like the day after Sunday, or is it Tuesday? I can't remember. But he created this event called Liberty Rocks, and this is the first one this year. This is the first annual one. He wants to do this every year and bring in the Libertarian Party and have it be like his event. And so I feel very happy about that. I feel very happy about playing Self-Reliance Festival. I feel very happy about playing at the Messianic Synagogue, where I could share my faith during the set. I just want to play things that are meaningful, and that doesn't have to be one encompassing thing, but I do want to play things for a reason. Like this band is existing not just out of vanity, out of my own personal, I'm trying to be a rock star or something. Like it's here to serve a purpose and help and build community as well, like what you guys are trying to do. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is on slavetoservant.com, you can go there, and I have tutorials on guitar parts. Feel free to learn them. If you're somebody who doesn't play music and maybe you make beats, I have all the stems on a stems tab. You can download the stems and make remixes to your heart's desire. Anyway, I'm just trying to form a community myself with Slave to Servant, and I want to bring more artists in. I look at like this going on for the next like 10 years at least, like just making records with Slave to Servant. And then in 10 years, I'd like to start producing the artists that are up and coming and start kind of being like a coach to them and helping them make their records and their art and supporting this same community. So it's kind of the way I look at things. I mean, I could go into much broader detail because I have a lot of ideas. I'm an ideas guy, but I'm also looking for a database of every single one of these kinds of festivals. So if you can get me a sheet, a list of all the festivals, I know you just went on a bunch of these places. I'm trying to figure out how this works with my old podcasting community that I was a part of. They have all these prophecy conferences. Like if I could go play prophecy conferences and prepper fests and like just do it all the time and just do that would be amazing. So far, we haven't made a dime off of playing any music. I didn't collect anything from SRF. I didn't collect anything from the Singularity show. And we are charging for our first time a $10 cover at this show and in Penn Yan on Sunday. But you get a CD with the admission. We wanted it to be special. So, but I'm looking. It would be nice to find a way to, because I can go myself. I still need to make money. And
don't apologize. Don't apologize.
Because I took the band out and I took them I bought their meals. Like I paid Jesse the drummer on top just for doing the gig because he runs a studio at home. He was out of work, but I looked at this as like a higher purpose. This was an experiment to go to SRF, and it was like, okay, I could see myself doing this, but I have things that I would change about what they did at SRF this year, about in regard to music, about how we structure it a little bit more. I have ideas of, I think that if you're going to have a musician, you should pay them, which I voluntarily, I'm not saying that is a bad thing. I just think if we're going to be doing it, we have to survive. So it was a good experience, totally amazing experience, but I'm trying to garner a community of people, and just like you are, and let's open the floodgates. I mean, the sky's the limit with creativity, and there's just so much that's just not being said, you know. I just look forward to seeing what the youth is going to create, you know.
Thank you, Sam. This was awesome. If you know, oh, thank you. You can help people and make money. They're not mutually exclusive. And you know what? Thank you. Thank you for coming on. Thanks. This was incredible. What a special night. You okay with hanging in the back for just a split second here while
Oh
I
yeah,
close?
totally. No, it's fine. It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, hang around in the back there for a minute. I'll be right back with you.
All right.
Guys, every so often something special happens, and tonight was one of those episodes of Workshop Radio. I know I kind of built Workshop Radio around the idea of being that radio, that AM radio that sits on your dad's workbench. Every time you went in, it was kind of the background to getting shit done. But tonight was just a little different, a little more special. This was the very first Unplugged that we got to witness, and thank you guys for being a part of it. Sam, I don't think it's possible for Sam not to bring his A game, but he played the hell out of those tunes. And I've talked about this a bunch, but he talked about what the next generation is going to do. And I truly believe that we're heading into a creator economy, because as people have to pull out of the system and as things become automated, we have to turn inward and create things for other people. And Sam's doing it. And I am just so full of ideas, but I just got to say thank you to Sam, because this was the start of something great. And you guys got to witness the launch of a new bridge of communities tonight. So thank you guys. I love all you fellow delinquents for coming in here and hanging out with us. And thank you very much for hanging with Sam and letting him get on this platform and play his ass off. So as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.